Jack Barton there. Well, the International Football Association, FIFA, has announced that Saudi Arabia will host the 2034 World Cup. It's a controversial selection. It involves Riyadh's human rights record and the desert climate, similar criticisms to when Qatar hosted in 2022. Meanwhile, 2030 will be held across 6 nations, with most of the games in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. Well, for more on this big announcements, let's turn to sports expert Raed Jurgis. He joins us live from Niagara, Canada. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, let's first talk about this selection of Saudi Arabia as the 2034 World Cup host. It was expected, but it's been widely condemned by human rights organizations. Can you tell us why this pick is so controversial?
It's the same old story as it happened with Qatar, and the problem here is that nobody presented the file for for competition with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia did a great job regarding the investment in football, regarding building up their national league and putting a huge investment for the World Cup, as Qatar did. However, the question mark is about the timing of every single wave of criticism comes after the selection, like it happened, as I said, in Qatar. Why these concerns were not raised before the selection? So here a question mark about the process in the FIFA, about the voting in the FIFA. I'm not here to judge if Saudi Arabia has problems or not in the human rights front. I'm not a specialist, and I'm not here to open this chapter. However, the question as sports expert is either we have a clear, transparent process all across the board, or we don't. And this problem is occurring again and again after every single World Cup selection.
From their perspective, Saudi officials counter those criticisms by saying the country, quote, champions a human rights approach and is committed to maximizing positive social impact. And FIFA itself said awarding the country the tournament could potentially encourage it to make future reforms. What do you think of those arguments?
Well, I believe that I judge, or let's say I base my facts on the things that I see in front of me, on tangible facts. Saudi Arabia did a huge investment in football. I don't want to criticize the political agenda or the human rights, because here, between brackets, I would like to ask, all the countries who hosted the World Cup or the Olympic Games are champions in every single domain in the world. I don't want to name countries, but we had many events, global events, such as the World Cup, such as the Olympic Games, hosted by countries who have, conflicts, war, and half the world had problems with them. So I don't want to judge this side. I'm going to judge the football side, the sporting side of it. It's great for the region, for the Middle East. It's the second after Qatar. And if FIFA really wants to spread the football all around the globe, as they say, they want to do one of their biggest objectives, it's a good thing to do. However, in the meantime, just to go back to the first point that I made, if there's a problem in the voting system or in the decision-making in FIFA, the members should address this before coming to big occasions like awarding the World Cup. There's around 200 members in the FIFA, more than the members in the United Nations. They should address this. It's almost ridiculous. After every single event, such as awarding the World Cup, we have the same accusations again, be it for Saudi Arabia or Qatar, or even back then in Argentina, let's say in '78. So they have to work on their own proper arrangement inside the house of FIFA.
Let's talk more about the sport itself and the role of the Gulf region in football. We have Saudi Arabia now, for example. Also, Qatar hosted the World Cup back in 2022. So how do you see the role of the region expanding in the sport beyond the traditional players like in Latin America and Europe, for example?
Very important topic. Thanks for asking. This is a huge investment. When we have, almost financial crisis all over the world with budget deficits in all major G7 countries, the investment that Qatar put and Saudi put and other countries, emerging countries, let's call them, in the football scene is very important. Why? Because there's no enthusiasm. We see that there's hesitation The proof is nobody put forward the file for hosting the World Cup 2034. And less countries are interested in hosting such events, not only the World Cup, the Olympic Games as well, the Commonwealth Games as well, the Francophone Games, the French-speaking countries Games. Why? Because there's a big question mark about the return on investment. Many studies shows that since 1960 or 1964, all major events, they don't make money, they lose money. However, so when we see a country such as the Middle East or the Gulf countries investing in sports, it comes as a oxygen, let's say, boost for the organization and for the game. Mind you that European countries, they had as well major question marks about the taxes because FIFA, they don't pay all the taxes in the countries where they host the World Cup. So the earnings from such a big event, which is billions of dollars, are not paid back for the country. Most of the countries who hosted the World Cup, like Brazil, South Africa, and other countries, they lost money. They invested more than the return that they get from this tournament.
Will be interesting to see, right, Georges? Thank you so much for joining our program and for your perspective.
Welcome.